I've been waiting for Final Fantasy VII Remake with great anticipation since the initial reveal 5 years ago. It was hard to believe at the time, thinking about one of my favorite games being brought back to life 20 years later. I was excited, but also curious. How would they change it? Would it be cool, or would they totally screw it up? This video will be massively spoiler heavy, so watch out. The game starts out insane. The music, graphics, scenery, the train rolls through and the characters all make their appearances and you're like, oh damn, this is already hitting me in the feels. In all the right ways. The story is old, but everything feels brand new. The combat was a big point of concern. It threw the old turn-based approach in the trash and said, forget that man, we're bringing this game into 2020. I will admit that I was a little skeptical too. I loved the combat of the original, and I was scared that it would be another Final Fantasy 15. But the combat is fantastic. It's ultra fast-paced, and each character feels extremely unique with what they bring to the table. Barrett destroys everything from a safe distance, and trust me, you will miss this beautiful man when he is not around and you're stuck doing this. Seriously, this is the worst. Please. Please. God, I hate it. Materia is implemented very well. You can customize your characters however you want. Cloud can be a magic user, Barrett can be a magic user, Tifa can be a magic user. Or you can just say to hell with all of that and just beat the crap out of everyone with your baseball bat. You can link elemental damage to your weapons, level up materia, unlock powerful new spells, and even get to see how cool it looks in your weapon while you're walking around. Summons and limit breaks play a smaller role in this game than the original. Limit breaks only happen every now and then, and usually only have a chance to build up during a boss fight. They are insanely powerful, almost to the point of being unfair. Here I'm thinking about using my limit break, but I'm feeling bad for the boss, because he still has a lot of health and he thinks he has a chance. Oh, he died. Summons only work during boss fights. They're pretty neat because they actually just walk around and fight with you for a while, and then they unleash a powerful butt smash move when the summon timer runs out. My favorite thing about the combat is that it actually feels like you can get really good at it. You constantly switch between 3 characters and use a ton of strategy and intentional actions to create scenarios where you demolish the enemy. If you suck, you can get punished for it. I loved how Final Fantasy VII Remake took the original and spread layer after layer of rich, juicy lore and background for the characters. It made me appreciate the characters and their relationships with each other so much more than before. I don't think I ever really cared that much about Biggs, Wedge, or Jessie, but suddenly it seems like they really matter. Kicking it with Tifa in the slums or high-fiving Aerith does so much. And it positions these characters to have truly awesome experiences together down the road, because of everything they've gone through together. And that's one thing I think Final Fantasy VII Remake does really well. It takes the original story and characters and gives them so much more substance that we can relate to. Midgar was pretty cool in the original game, but it only took a few hours to blast through, and by the time you're halfway through the game, you probably barely remember it. Final Fantasy VII Remake almost feels like a more accurate depiction of what actually happened, only we were given a more condensed version of it the first time. Modern games have this huge issue nowadays where they overwhelm the player with a billion trivial quests. Like, deliver my mail to this guy in the next town, but also rescue 7 cats, and while you're at it, maybe you can acquire 16 herbs from the abandoned field on the other side of the island, but then wait, can you also kill the same monster over and over and over and over again, until he hopefully drops this ultra rare item and then bring it back to me for my... Just stop it. Final Fantasy 15 had so many terrible side quests that I feared the worst for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And while this game is not immune to boring side quests, it does a much better job of feeding them to the player every so often and in much more manageable doses. It's usually when you get to a cool new place like Wall Market, and I found myself pretty excited most of the time because it meant I got to explore all of the new area. The game can be a bit ridiculous with the innuendo and the fan service. Seriously, the fan service? Okay, they're not even trying to be subtle. All of the girls in the game are on Cloud's nuts constantly. And what's going on here? I get that Jessie was sort of into Cloud in the original, but damn, this is getting hot and heavy, and I'm starting to feel a little weird if you can't tell. The Aerith-Tifa rivalry is no secret, and honestly, besides a little bit of tension early on, they don't actually dwell on it too much as you progress further into the game. The dialogue is honestly not that bad, and it makes me laugh quite a bit. I especially enjoyed pretty much everything Barrett said.
And where are the rest of you? Up your ass.
Not to say there weren't any awkward or corny moments.
Avalanche.
Local florist.
Lab rat dog.
There were also some pretty lame things in the game, like getting busy with this crane, these horrendous monkey bar climbing scenes, and that time they made you slowly walk up 59 flights of stairs. As Cloud gets slower and slower and slower.
This sucks! I want to go back!
Actually, just kidding, the stair scene was awesome. There are a lot of times in the game where nothing makes any sense at all, like how no one in the Shinra building seems to recognize the terrorists who are just all over the news for trying to destroy their company. Now let's get into the big spoilers section of the game. Final Fantasy VII Remake introduces these weird things called whispers, which are just here to mess with everything. At first I was really confused about what their purpose was, but by the end, okay, wait, we'll get to that. The whispers show up randomly all throughout the game and are super annoying to fight, and always do strange stuff like either protect you or screw you over, depending on their mood. The whispers seem to be the definitive difference between the remake and the original. And boy, that is putting it mildly. Final Fantasy VII Remake cruises along with this certain vibe and feel. It's really consistent and in sync with the original's appeal. It's so freaking good, and it's certainly why I beat the game in less than 2 weeks. I always wanted more. I was ready for that next scene. The church. The Turks. Sector 5 collapsing. Don Corneo. I used to call him Don Corneo. When I was standing outside of President Shinra's office, I was buzzing. I knew what was on the other side. I stepped in and was like, hey man, how's that sword in your back feel? But wait, what's this? He's not there? Okay, turns out he's just hanging out on the ledge here. A bit different, but cool, I can dig it. It seems like Barrett is getting some enjoyment out of this, and if Barrett likes it, then so do I. Wait, what the f? What just happened? What? Whew, okay, wow, okay, Barrett is alive. Turns out these whispers are plot ghosts. No, for real, I am not kidding. It turns out the whispers were put in the game to defend the previous game's story, and anything that happens in Final Fantasy VII Remake that isn't in alignment with that story, like Barrett getting a sword through his chest, is unacceptable and will be undone by the plot ghosts. So then this ultimate whisper god appears and is apparently the manifestation of this idea that destiny, or how the story originally went, must be preserved. At this point, the game goes from 60 to 200 miles per hour in the snap of a finger, and suddenly I'm having trouble relating to the Cloud who couldn't jump this gap to grab a materia. So we kick the giant demigod's ass, and in that action, basically defeat the notion that Final Fantasy VII Remake has to follow the storyline of the original game. At least that's what I gathered from all of this. You also fight Sephiroth to the tune of One Winged Angel, which is slightly jarring because, dude, I haven't even left Midgar yet. What's going on here? The transition in the game that happens at the end is very shocking. The original storyline builds up Sephiroth slowly over time. At this point in the game, he was still an enigma. But we've now just had a huge Dragon Ball Z style fight with him, so what happens next? And that's really an interesting question. What does happen next? Did Square Enix pop off too soon? Will the build and suspense still be there as we continue into the next chapter? The ending left me conflicted, but the truth is that I absolutely loved this game for the most part. As ridiculous and over the top as the ending was, it felt like Square Enix was essentially doing it to communicate to us that it wants the freedom to make changes to not be bound to the original game script. Now that the Whispers aren't around to preserve the original storyline, I suppose it's anyone's guess what happens next.